it's Rob again. It's time for another Member Talks, and we are coming to you with a new presenter, a new speaker that we've just met recently. We actually saw them at the NFDA virtual conference, which was a lot of fun. If you didn't get a chance to go to that conference or a convention, boy, you missed out because there was a lot of great presenters and things. But we met somebody there by the name of Bill Johnston. And I'm going to bring him on, and we're going to talk to Bill and kind of talk about what he does and why he does it. Bill, are you there?
I am here, Rob.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Hope you are.
Good. Now, Bill, just so we're all clear, where are you right now? Besides in your home, where are you in the country?
I'm in Daphne, Alabama, and
Okay.
we moved here from North Carolina in May of this year to be with grandchildren. Zig Ziglar said, if I'd known I wanted grandchildren this badly, I'd have been nicer to their parents, right? So we moved here in May, and then Hurricane Sally came through and took off about a third of the front roof of our home, right? So we have water damage and all this kind of stuff. And then was it Zeta that came through last week? We had damage in the backside of our home. So that combined with a staph infection in my left knee, which means I can't even stink and walk half the time. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, that's great. You know, positivity.
There you go. Well, I mean,
awesome.
misery is optional. So, I mean, come on.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, we love positivity, especially now. You know, we're kind of in a really difficult time. Not only countrywide, but everything else. Everything's up in turmoil. So we could use all the positivity we get. So thank you.
There you go.
Thank you for that.
There you go.
So Bill, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're in Alabama, but you wrote a book.
I did
and
write
I
a book.
Kind of talk about that book a little bit.
Yeah. The book is if you follow authority marketing, a book is just an absolutely essential. And you know, Rob, I'm not from the funeral industry.
Mm-hmm.
My entire background began in broadcasting. I'm from Western New York State. I'm a Syracuse Newhouse School graduate. And so I spent 25 years managing radio stations. I also have a software background and a complex sales process background. So I've done a lot of things. But about 4 years ago, I found myself working for myself. I left broadcasting, and I was building a retail-based Facebook practice.
Okay.
And honestly, Rob, I knew nothing about Facebook. But in September 4 years ago, I declared I would be a Facebook expert. And today I am. So in the course of that retail production, one of my clients was Ven Falk of Shoemate Falk Funeral Home in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And I'd written, 1 zillion radio ads for Ven, and writing ads is not something that is difficult for me. It's very easy for me to do. And so when I'd moved from Eastern North Carolina to the central part of the state, I got another funeral home. So now I have 2. And that funeral home introduced me to 6 more accounts. And so now I have 8 funeral homes. And I have no idea what to say. Because I mean, when you think about it, and I've asked this to hundreds of people in the funeral industry, it's like deer in the headlight when it comes to you answering questions about what it is that makes your business unique. Mm-hmm. And because typically folks go back to, well, we've been here since this date, and we're family owned, or we care, and all this kind of stuff. And so what ends up happening is not only is it painful for the operator, it's painful for the broadcaster or the TV person or the newspaper person trying to write an ad. So we discovered during that period of time that we looked at the topics that we wrote, and we started putting them into silos, and we saw the topics that resonated well with Facebook users. So, for example, one of our topics is funeral director branding. One of our topics is facility. In other words, you have a beautiful facility. Well, what's the benefit of having a beautiful facility with comfortable meeting rooms and a beautiful chapel? So we siloed these topics, and then we started to discover that it was a lot easier to write an ad when you knew what the topic of the ad was. And in funeral, and you know this, how many topics are there? I mean, can you think of a few? And that's the challenge, is most can't. So in our book, we highlight at least 10 topics in the back of the book. And again, by knowing what the topics are, it's a lot easier to write for the business. So the reason I wrote the book was I have a growing practice, and we're trying to make that move from being a regional provider in the Carolinas at the time to now having a more national service. So a book is absolutely essential.
Yeah. Now, the book is called Why Facebook Works for Funeral Homes and Everything Else Doesn't. It's by Bill Johnston. Before we dive into it, I know we can get it on Amazon. I know we used to be able to. I don't know if it still is. I haven't checked it yet or not, but on NFDA website. Is there anywhere else where we can go to find the book so that we can look at it?
Those would be the two resources. I mean, if you come to my website, which I'd love for you to do, which is postandboost.com, there is an overview page about the book, but it links you to Amazon. The Amazon self-publishing program it's just awesome. Yeah. And so it makes it possible to, I mean, this book is beautiful, and it's expensive because it's in color, but it's beautiful because it's in color. Right. So, and it's a comprehensive book. I mean, what I tried to do was give the reader an understanding of what Facebook is, because a lot of people in the funeral industry, when it comes to social media, their eyes glaze over. I mean, what is social media? It's media, but is it advertising? I don't know. And so, and I've looked at hundreds of funeral home Facebook pages, and there's a lot of what I'll call Hallmark advertising or Hallmark posts. So what is a Hallmark post? Well, you know what a Hallmark card looks like.
Sure.
Well, that's going to be a typical Hallmark post on a funeral home page. And a lot of times when we see those kinds of posts, they're not boosted at all. So they appear on a page and they don't accomplish anything. But the funeral home owner believes that with all this stuff on their page, that they can check box social media and I'm good in social media. And the answer is that they're not, because nobody sees it. It's a secret. All those ads need to be boosted to get out into the community. You said so yourself, you're doing a post for one of your customers and you're doing a meet the funeral director. Well, I guarantee you when you take that post and you boost it, people will interact with it. Yeah. So having the, knowing what the topics, circling back to knowing what the topics are, that's important. But we tell people what Facebook is in this book. And so for that operator who doesn't understand it, Facebook is the newspaper. Mm-hmm. It's really what the newspaper used to be, because 7 out of 10 people in America are reached by Facebook every week. That is as big as the newspaper used to be 20 years ago.
Sure.
And you can advertise in Facebook for a lot less money. So we talk about that, how advertising works, and then really why Facebook works for funeral homes. And that's, I think, where you think about a funeral ad on a radio station, which I've written, a funeral ad on television, which we have a package of TV, beautiful cable TV ads for a funeral. If you look at those, they can become very stale very quickly because they burn in. But with Facebook ads, you can refresh them. And so where it's maybe awkward for funeral homes and radio and awkward for funeral homes and TV, the Facebook advertising lane is perfect for a funeral home because it's a great place to tell stories. Mm-hmm. So it's just as easy to talk about a funeral home on Facebook as it is to write an ad for a furniture store. Yeah. So, and you can't do that in mass media, but you can do it in a one-to-one medium like Facebook.
And correct me if I'm wrong in this assumption, please, but it seems to me the people operating funeral homes, at least where we're at in our state, for the most part, have been doing it for years and years. Chances are they probably did not have any sort of, when they were going to school, mortuary school, there was no such thing as Facebook. There was no such
Right.
thing as social media. For that part, in many cases there was no internet. So this is, in a lot of ways, very much brand new advertising. But you talked on a topic at NFDA, and I heard you just say it again. Facebook is the new newspaper. And that's kind of interesting to say that, because in NFDA, and forgive me if I'm stepping on your toes or borrowing your text there, but you talked about, what was the newspaper? Well, it was sports. It was the gossip column. It was the comic strips. It was the news headlines. It was the national news, the local news, all of that stuff. It was the obituaries. It was all of these things, which is now what Facebook is.
Correct.
It's all on Facebook. And so being a part of that, the advertising into something like that just seems to be that next generation, or that next way to do things better than what we've done for forever. It seems like this is a much greater audience that we can reach.
Well, it's an easier audience to reach, and Facebook is a very mature. There's not one demographic that you can't buy in Facebook where you could not reach a critical mass. Mm-hmm. For example, Facebook reaches almost half of adults over the age of 65.
Right.
I mean, that's really impressive. So
and that's our boomers that are there. We got a bazillion of them.
Yeah. So that's a tip for everybody. Continue to moisturize your face. So just anyway, so there's the reach capability in Facebook it's really phenomenal. And where newspaper is, you have one newspaper for everybody. With Facebook, because of friends and pages that you like, your version of Facebook is just for you. And so it is so doggone personal that when you read something that I write, which is a very personal ad, and by the way, Rob, the way that we write our ads, we never apologize for what a funeral home does. Good. And, there's so many ads I've heard over the years where, when it's time for you to call us, and this apology, a 30-second or 60-second apology. We make no apology for the amazing job that funeral directors and their assistants and the owners do for the families in their care. I mean, think about it. A family's keeping someone alive for months, and a funeral director can walk into a room, remove the deceased within an hour, and the family feels okay about it. So it's an incredible feat to be able to do that. And we get to write about it in a way where it is personal. Mm-hmm. And so, and what was a surprise to us is that, we had clients that say, can we find things to write about that have nothing to do with death? Well, no, you can't. We're in the funeral. It's like, hey, we're selling automobiles this week at Ben Jones Ford. And by the way, check out our boats. It's like, no, it doesn't. That doesn't work. It has to be about funeral. And we found users, because users have been to a funeral, they've been to a visitation, or they've lost a loved one or loved ones, because they've interacted and met those funeral directors before. It is an incredibly positive string of interaction between the person who's on our post and the person on the other end on Facebook, interacting with a funeral director, talking about something they did for a loved one 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Let me ask a question that seems to come up pretty regularly in social sites. A lot of people think that Facebook is a great way to put obituaries out and put every single obituary. And some people say, no, it's usable for much, much more than that. What's your thoughts on that, Bill? What do you think about putting every obituary on Facebook?
Well, during my NFDA technology workshop, there's a text thread going, mm-hmm. and it was not a thread that had anything to do really with what I was talking about at the moment, but they were asking the questions. Do you put obituaries on Facebook? Do you put obituaries? So all these people are trying to demonstrate how smart they are by doing these text messages. And so someone made a comment, because I made a comment on the piece. I said that you should post your obituaries. And so someone came back and said, well, last year, the Facebook expert said that we shouldn't do that. Yeah. And I'm watching the thread, and I finally wrote into the thread, well, I'm an expert. You know, I mean, give me a break.
Yeah.
And so the way that I present that is this. First of all, from a story standpoint, you think about this. Somebody lives their entire life so that their obituary reads so beautifully. Mm-hmm. That's a story. Why would you not tell that story on Facebook?
Yeah.
So the story should be told. And then the second thing is, I think that when everyone talks about you shouldn't post obituaries on your Facebook page, their perception is that users are going to funeral home Facebook pages to read obituaries. And that's not what is happening. Because what happens is something is posted on the page, and I liken a Facebook page to a radio station. It's where our message is broadcasted from. So people aren't coming to your funeral home Facebook page to read obituaries. You're hoping that you have enough organic activity on your page that when you post an obituary, people will see it and they'll share it with friends. And so the idea is to get the obituary into the community, into everyone's newsfeed. And when they go to the obituary, the best practices would be that the complete obituary does not live on Facebook.
Right.
It lives on the website. So there's going to be a link to the website to read more. And that's the whole idea, is to drive traffic to the website.
So using the model that Facebook is the new newspaper, really we want to put obituaries on there because they were in the newspaper. But
exactly,
we don't want a newspaper that's just full of obituaries. We want to read about what's going on at the local sports. We want to read about what's going on in the national news, and so we need to, using that as an example, we need to interject so many other things into that Facebook page as well, that it's not just when you go to it, it's just a big long stream of obituaries.
Yeah, well, we did a study, and because every client that we have, we buy ads for. We don't post anything without boosting it.
Yeah.
And we figured out for every one person that came to a Facebook page to look at it, we were reaching 29 people.
Okay.
So it's an overwhelming number of people that you're able to reach. So, and the other thing too, Rob, is that, you know, I have clients, you know, where, for example, we did a 1 month report to figure out how many times people are being reached. So they might see a post from a funeral home, a paid post, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 times, and that's it. There's a lot of competition for eyeballs on Facebook. Mm-hmm. So the message that you do put out that you're paying for, you ultimately want it to be something that brands what makes your funeral home unique, and reasons that people would want to turn to your funeral home when they lose a loved one.
Okay. Well, this has been exciting. I love talking about Facebook and social media. One thing that we found for our association is these sites, Facebook, some of the other social sites that are out there, these are really the best way for us to connect.
Yeah.
Whether we're in a pandemic or not, these are the best way for us to connect with people, short of actually physically going into funeral homes and connecting with them.
Right.
Which we certainly would like to do, but you know, even not having a pandemic makes it difficult to do that. Mm-hmm. But Facebook in particular has been just a blessing for us as a way to announce things, as a way to talk about things, right. All that stuff. So I'm excited that you've come on. You've got a company called Post and Boost. Mm-hmm. Tell us briefly about that company. What does it do for funeral homes?
Well, we are a market exclusive service. So we only work for one funeral home in one area. And we believe, Rob, we believe that we provide our clients with a competitive advantage. And we know what to say. We know what to focus on in terms of images. And it starts with the premise of what is unique about your funeral home. And when I asked that question to Jim Lau, he owns Lau Funeral Home. He's president of Lau Funeral Home and Crematory in Burlington, North Carolina. When I first met him and I asked him that question, he immediately said, it's our people. Our people makes us unique. So our content that we provide for our customers is photography. Yeah. So we've taken thousands of pictures of funeral homes, funeral directors, funeral assistants, office managers, owners, certified therapy dogs. And because of the way that we produce our content, it is incredibly consistent. So we are a full service Facebook provider. We do a post on Monday and Wednesday and Friday. We buy advertising based on the topic and the geography. And then we also do organic work. So we go behind every post that we build, and we ask anybody that likes a post to like a page. We are going to monitor pages for bad actors. And during COVID, have been a few bad actors. But that there's a sense of security that our customers appreciate by us keeping their reputation where they want it to be. So we're a full service provider, and honestly, from a value standpoint, we probably offer a pretty good service for probably one of the best values, because my goal is to overproduce, over deliver. So that's our service, and we'd love to have some new clients in Washington. It'd be great.
Yeah, good. Well, why Facebook works for funeral homes and everything else. We said that we can find it at Amazon.
That's
we
correct.
Said that we can find it at NFDA.
And if you visit our website, postandboost.com, postandboost.com, there is a link in there called Bill's Book. And also on our website, we have a free white paper. It's called The 5 Mistakes Funeral Homes Make on Facebook. And one of them is how they handle obituaries. So that's a free resource that folks can take advantage of right now. And then the other thing, of course, is that if you wanted to meet with me and have a conversation, the thing that I do is I look at your Facebook page, and then we look at other Facebook pages in the market that we're considering doing work with. And they are incredibly revealing moments. Yeah.
Well, it's very similar to a statement to websites, business websites. We've got funeral homes all over the state that basically have the same exact website as the guy next door, because they're all getting them from the same spot, which is fine. It's a good way to do it, but it doesn't distinguish you from other folks.
You're right, Rob. And again, what we believe what distinguishes a funeral home is their people. Yeah. And so we've been able to put the words and the people together to make what I consider to be poetry. We every time we post something on Facebook, we always have to repeat the word nice.
Yeah.
And because when we repeat that word, what that tells us is that we're conveying that feeling that our customers want to convey on Facebook. Feels good.
Yeah. I got one other quick question for you, and then I'll let you get back to what you're doing there. But do me a favor, hold your book up one more time so we can see it, take a peek at it.
All right.
Why Facebook works for funeral homes and everything else.
Does not.
Or does not work. Does.
Everything else doesn't. Yeah.
So here's my question for you. What funeral home is that on the cover? Because that place is beautiful.
That is Piedmont Funeral Home in Lexington, North Carolina.
Wow.
And that is actually what we call their value funeral home. They have Davidson has 2 funeral homes in Lexington, North Carolina. And so if people are looking to save money, then we promote this using a value positioning statement. But this facility was built in the 1830s, and it was an authentic Southern plantation home. That did not get destroyed by Union soldiers. So, but it's a beautiful, you're right, it's a beautiful building.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on here, Bill. I loved listening to you at NFDA. Once we met there, I was so excited to be able to get this one-on-one with you. Postandboost.com. You can, while you're there, you can reach out to Bill direct through that. You can also go to, you said Bill's book, I think is the link in there. That's a clever title.
Yeah.
But why Facebook works for funeral homes and everything else doesn't. Check it out. Check it out. Go on to Amazon, go on to NFDA, go on to postandboost.com and get a copy of this book. Step outside the comfort zone just a little bit and see what happens. I think we get tied up too much with we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to advertise on, they'll come to us if we just do our thing. And yeah, they will, but there's a lot greater ways to also get folks to look at your places. So, Bill, thanks again for coming out, and we really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Rob.